The first message came in at 2:17 a.m., and it wasn't meant for her. That's how this story starts. One phone buzzing in the dark, one name that didn't belong to the wife lighting up the screen, and one moment that quietly changed everything. No screaming. No dramatic music. Just a woman staring at a phone, realizing that the life she thought she knew had been split in two. This isn't just a story about a wife and a side chick. This is a story about audacity, secrets, and how far people will go when they think they won't be caught. From the outside, the marriage looked normal. Not perfect, but solid enough. They had history, shared bills, shared jokes, shared struggles. The wife believed in the idea that love wasn't always loud, that loyalty mattered more than butterflies. She trusted her husband because trust was easier than suspicion. She had no reason to think there was a third person quietly inserting herself into their marriage. Or at least that's what she told herself for a long time. The side chick, on the other hand, didn't see herself as a villain. She saw herself as someone who fell in love. Someone who believed she was chosen. She knew he was married, yes, but she also knew the stories he fed her. Stories about being unhappy, misunderstood, trapped. Stories that painted the wife as distant and cold. And she believed them. Or maybe she chose to believe them because it made everything feel justified. The affair didn't start loud either. It started with small conversations, harmless laughs, and long talks that crossed lines slowly. A text here. A call there. Emotional intimacy before anything else. That's how betrayal often creeps in. Quiet enough to deny. Easy enough to hide. Until it isn't. The wife didn't go looking for the truth. The truth came knocking. Little signs began stacking up. Late nights. Changed passwords. A husband who suddenly guarded his phone like it held state secrets. She noticed, but she didn't accuse. She observed. She waited. Because sometimes when you wait, people get comfortable. And comfortable people get careless. When she finally read the messages, what shocked her wasn't just the affair. It was the tone. The confidence. The way the side chick spoke about her like she was an obstacle, not a person. Jokes about his wife, as if she were a problem to be managed. Plans discussed with no shame. That's when disbelief turned into something heavier. Something colder. Still, the wife didn't react the way most people expect. She didn't call immediately. She didn't throw things. She didn't post online. She took screenshots. She breathed. She asked herself one question. How bold do you have to be to sit comfortably in another woman's marriage and feel entitled? The confrontation wasn't planned. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. No audience. No warning. Just three people standing in the same truth for the first time. The husband looked cornered. The side chick looked annoyed, not ashamed. And that's where the audacity really showed itself. Instead of apologizing, the side chick spoke like she had a seat at the table. She talked about love. About how long it had been going on. About how she understood him better. She didn't lower her voice. She didn't check herself. She spoke to the wife as if they were equals competing for the same prize. That moment burned itself into the wife's memory. The wife listened. That's the part people don't expect. She listened to every word. And with every sentence, something inside her shifted. This wasn't just about a cheating husband anymore. This was about boundaries being crossed without permission. About disrespect layered on top of betrayal. About a side chick who felt far too comfortable standing in her space. What made it worse was the confidence. The side chick spoke as if the marriage was already over, as if the wife just hadn't caught up yet. She talked about plans, about futures, about things that were never hers to promise. The husband stayed mostly quiet, trapped between the two women, realizing too late that secrets don't stay secret forever. The wife didn't cry. Not then. She asked simple questions. Calm questions. Questions that forced honesty into the room. And every answer tightened the tension. Because the truth, once spoken out loud, has a way of changing the temperature. The air felt heavy. The silence between words said more than the words themselves. This wasn't a fight with raised voices or flying insults. It was something sharper. A quiet power shift. The wife realized she wasn't just confronting a side chick. She was confronting the version of herself that had been taken for granted. And she decided in that moment that she would not beg, compete, or shrink. The side chick, sensing the shift, pushed harder. She crossed lines. Said things she shouldn't have said. Compared herself. Made claims she couldn't back up. And with every sentence she revealed exactly who she was. Not someone caught in a messy situation, but someone bold enough to believe she deserved more than she was given. The story doesn't end neatly. Not here. Because choices were made that day, but consequences hadn't landed yet. The marriage hung in the balance. The affair was exposed but not resolved. And the wife, standing there with more clarity than ever, had one final decision to make. What she chose next would shock everyone involved. And the side chick had no idea that her confidence was about to meet something she didn't see coming. After that moment, nothing went back to normal, even though everyone pretended it did. The wife returned home that evening like it was any other day. She cooked dinner. She cleaned up. She answered work emails. But inside, her mind was replaying every word from that confrontation. The confidence in the side chick's voice. The silence from her husband. The way the truth sat in the room like it owned the place. She didn't confront him again that night. She needed time, not because she was weak but because she was thinking. The husband tried to act normal too. He asked how her day was. He talked about work. He laughed at things that weren't funny. But there was a tension in his movements, a carefulness that hadn't been there before. He knew she knew. And that knowledge changed everything. He slept lightly, turning often, as if his own thoughts wouldn't let him rest. The wife lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of someone she once trusted breathe beside her. Days passed and the silence grew louder. The wife started noticing things she had once ignored. How he stepped outside to take calls. How he smiled at his phone before quickly locking the screen. How he avoided real conversations. She wasn't guessing anymore. She was observing with clear eyes. Betrayal has a way of sharpening your awareness. The side chick didn't disappear after being exposed. That was another shock. Instead of backing away, she leaned in. Messages kept coming. Missed calls. Long paragraphs sent late at night. She acted like the confrontation had been a misunderstanding, like everything was still open for discussion. Her audacity didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger. She told herself stories to stay comfortable. She believed she was special. That their connection was different. That the wife was just holding on to something that had already slipped away. She didn't see herself as interfering. She saw herself as waiting her turn. And that belief gave her the confidence to keep pushing boundaries that didn't belong to her. The wife learned this not through snooping but through patterns. She saw how his mood changed after certain calls. How arguments appeared out of nowhere. How distance replaced warmth. She realized something painful but important. The affair wasn't just physical or emotional. It had spilled into their everyday life, quietly rewriting the rules of their marriage. What hurt the most wasn't the other woman. It was the way her husband allowed it. The way he didn't shut it down. The way he let another person speak so boldly about a life that wasn't theirs. That realization sat heavy on her chest. Because it meant the problem was deeper than one outside influence. Still, she stayed quiet. Not because she didn't care, but because she was collecting clarity. She started remembering old moments that suddenly made sense. The unexplained arguments. The sudden criticism. The way he made her feel like she was always asking for too much. She saw how slowly she had been pushed into doubt while someone else was being reassured. Meanwhile, the side chick was growing impatient. She wanted answers. She wanted movement. She wanted proof that she wasn't just a secret anymore. Her messages shifted in tone. Less romantic. More demanding. She asked questions about the wife. About the house. About plans. Questions that crossed lines and ignored reality. The husband stood in the middle, pulled in opposite directions, trying to manage two worlds that were colliding faster than he expected. He made promises he couldn't keep. He told different versions of the truth depending on who was listening. And every lie added weight to a situation already on the edge. The wife noticed his frustration. His short temper. His distant gaze. She realized he wasn't just afraid of losing her. He was afraid of being exposed fully. Afraid of consequences. Afraid of choosing. And that fear made him careless. One evening, the wife received a message that wasn't meant for her. Again. This time it wasn't sweet or romantic. It was bold. Direct. Almost confrontational. The side chick had crossed another line, reaching out as if the wife were just another obstacle to negotiate with. No apology. No respect. Just entitlement. The wife stared at the message for a long time. Not angry. Not shocked. Just deeply aware. She saw the pattern clearly now. This wasn't about love. This was about ego, competition, and blurred boundaries. It was about a woman who felt emboldened by secrecy and a man who benefited from being wanted by two people. Instead of responding, the wife saved the message. She added it to everything else she had quietly gathered. Screenshots. Dates. Details. Not for revenge but for truth. Because she knew one thing for sure now. When the time came to speak again, she would speak with facts, not emotions. The side chick mistook the silence for weakness. She grew bolder. She began making assumptions. She spoke as if the wife was already out of the picture, as if the outcome was guaranteed. She didn't realize that silence can be strategic. That calm can be dangerous when someone has finally reached clarity. The tension followed everyone. It showed up in small moments. Awkward pauses. Unfinished sentences. Doors closing a little harder than necessary. Friends noticed something was off. Family sensed distance. But no one knew the full story. Not yet. At night, the wife thought about who she had been before all of this. The trust she gave freely. The future she imagined. She wasn't mourning the marriage yet. She was mourning the version of herself that believed loyalty was enough to protect love. The side chick, meanwhile, waited for validation. For confirmation that she mattered more than she was being treated. She wanted a declaration. A choice. Something solid. And her impatience was becoming a problem. Because the closer she pushed, the more cracks appeared. And those cracks were leading toward a moment no one was fully prepared for. What none of them realized was that the story was quietly shifting. The balance of power was changing. And the next move, when it came, would force everyone to face the truth they had been avoiding. The wife began to see the situation from angles she hadn't considered before. She watched her husband more closely, not with suspicion anymore, but with curiosity. She wanted to understand how he justified everything in his own mind. When he spoke about stress or pressure, she heard excuses layered over guilt. When he complained about feeling misunderstood, she realized he was talking about being seen too clearly. The man she thought she knew was unraveling in small, revealing ways. At work, the wife carried herself the same, but inside she felt different. Conversations with co-workers felt distant, like she was standing behind glass. She smiled when needed, nodded at the right moments, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She wondered how many people walked around every day carrying quiet storms like hers. How many smiles were covering battles no one knew about. The husband, meanwhile, was struggling to keep control. He felt the weight of both women pulling at him, each in different ways. With his wife, there was history, responsibility, and the fear of losing everything familiar. With the side chick, there was validation, excitement, and the illusion of escape. He told himself he was confused, but deep down, he knew confusion was just another word for avoidance. The side chick started telling her own version of the story to friends. She painted herself as someone stuck in a complicated situation, waiting patiently for a man who promised her a future. She left out details that didn't fit that image. She didn't mention the wife's calm strength or the fact that nothing had actually changed in her favor. She needed reassurance from others because doubt was creeping in, and she didn't want to face it alone. From her perspective, the wife was an idea, not a person. A name attached to an inconvenience. She never imagined the wife sitting quietly, observing, thinking, gathering herself. She assumed pain would make her emotional, reactive, easy to dismiss. That assumption would later prove to be a mistake. The wife started leaning into herself more. She took longer walks. She spent time alone without distractions. She revisited old dreams she had set aside. Not because she was planning to leave yet, but because she needed to remember who she was outside of being someone's partner. The betrayal had shaken her, but it had also awakened something she hadn't felt in a long time: awareness. The tension between her and her husband became harder to hide. Conversations felt forced. Touch felt awkward. Even shared silence felt different, heavier. He sensed her emotional distance and tried in small ways to pull her back. A random compliment. An unexpected favor. But none of it reached her. She could tell when effort came from fear instead of love. One night, an argument broke out over something small. Dishes left in the sink. A missed call. It escalated quickly, not because of the issue itself, but because of everything underneath it. Words slipped out that couldn't be taken back. Accusations danced around the truth without naming it. And in the middle of it all, the side chick's presence hovered like an unspoken ghost. The husband accused the wife of being distant. She accused him of being dishonest. They circled the real issue without touching it, both afraid of what would happen if they said it out loud. When the argument ended, nothing was solved. The space between them felt wider than ever. The side chick sensed the shift again. She could feel him pulling back, growing cautious. That made her anxious. She didn't want to lose ground. So she pushed for more reassurance, more attention, more promises. She wanted proof that she hadn't sacrificed her dignity for nothing. Her messages became heavier, emotionally charged, filled with questions that demanded answers. The husband felt trapped by those messages. What once felt exciting now felt demanding. The secrecy that once thrilled him now exhausted him. He started to realize that maintaining lies required more energy than telling the truth. But the truth scared him. Because the truth would force him to face consequences he had been avoiding. The wife noticed his stress. She noticed how quickly he snapped, how distracted he was, how often he seemed somewhere else even when sitting right next to her. She didn't comfort him. Not because she didn't care, but because she refused to soothe a problem she didn't create. She began to prepare herself emotionally for multiple outcomes. She didn't decide anything yet. She just allowed herself to imagine different futures. One where trust could somehow be rebuilt. One where it couldn't. One where she walked away stronger but changed. Each possibility came with its own kind of pain, but also its own kind of freedom. Meanwhile, the side chick's confidence started to crack. She noticed inconsistencies. Promises that kept being delayed. Plans that never fully formed. She started questioning whether she was being strung along. The thought made her angry because it threatened the story she told herself. Anger turned outward quickly. Toward the wife. Toward the situation. Toward the man who suddenly seemed less certain. She began comparing herself more openly. Pointing out differences. Highlighting what she believed she offered that the wife didn't. She didn't realize that comparison only revealed insecurity. She believed boldness would secure her place, unaware that it was pushing everything closer to collapse. The wife became aware of this shift too. She could sense the desperation behind the boldness. She understood something important then. The side chick wasn't as confident as she appeared. Confidence doesn't need to announce itself. And that realization gave the wife a strange sense of calm. Still, the situation remained unresolved. No decisions were announced. No truths fully spoken. Just tension stretching thinner with each passing day. Everyone was waiting for something. A breaking point. A confession. A choice. What they didn't realize was that the longer the truth stayed buried, the more damage it caused. And when it finally surfaced, it wouldn't come gently. The pressure started showing in ways none of them could ignore anymore. Little things felt heavier. Time moved slower. Every conversation felt like it was carrying a hidden meaning. The wife woke up each day with a quiet sense of alertness, like she was standing at the edge of something big. She didn't know exactly when it would happen, but she knew the moment was coming. You can feel it when the truth gets tired of being buried. The husband grew restless. He paced more. He checked his phone constantly, then tossed it aside like it burned his hand. He wanted relief, but relief only comes after honesty, and honesty was the one thing he kept avoiding. He told himself he just needed more time, that things would settle, that he could still fix everything without blowing it all up. Deep down, though, he knew time was making it worse. The side chick was no longer satisfied with vague answers. She wanted clarity, labels, direction. She wanted to know where she stood, and she wanted it now. Her patience had run out. Every delay felt like disrespect. Every unanswered message felt like rejection. The same boldness that once made her feel powerful now came from fear of being forgotten. She started asking questions that couldn't be brushed off anymore. About holidays. About finances. About why nothing had changed. She wanted proof that she wasn't just an option. She wanted something concrete, something undeniable. And when she didn't get it, her tone shifted from hopeful to confrontational. The wife felt the shift too. She could sense the tightening of the situation, like a rope being pulled from both ends. She stayed composed on the outside, but inside she was bracing herself. She had stopped hoping for explanations. Now she was preparing for impact. One evening, the tension finally broke through the surface. The husband came home late, visibly stressed, his energy sharp and scattered. The wife didn't ask where he'd been. She didn't need to. The silence between them was louder than any accusation. He tried to make small talk, but his words fell flat. She listened without reacting, her calm making him more uneasy than anger ever could. Later that night, his phone buzzed again. He froze. The wife noticed. She didn't reach for the phone. She didn't demand to see it. She simply looked at him, really looked at him, and in that moment he knew he was out of time. That look carried everything he had been avoiding. Awareness. Disappointment. Strength. The side chick, unaware of what was happening in that house, was reaching her own breaking point. She felt the distance growing, and instead of pulling back, she pushed harder. She sent a message she couldn't take back. Direct. Emotional. Final. She demanded a decision. Not soon. Not eventually. No. The husband read it and felt his chest tighten. There was no neutral response left. Anything he said would tip the balance. He stared at the screen, knowing that one message could change everything. He typed. Deleted. Typed again. His hands shook. For the first time, the consequences felt real. The wife sensed something shift that night. She couldn't explain it, but the air felt different. Heavy charged. She sat alone in the living room long after he went to bed, replaying everything that had led to this moment. The lies, the silence, the disrespect. She wasn't angry anymore. She was resolved. And that scared him more than anything else. The next few days felt like a countdown. The husband was unusually quiet. The side chick was unusually intense. And the wife was unusually calm. Each of them was preparing for a moment they couldn't fully predict. Friends started noticing the strain. The wife's closest friend asked if everything was okay. She smiled and said yes, but her eyes told a different story. She wasn't ready to share yet. Some things need to be faced before they can be spoken. The side chick began imagining confrontations. She rehearsed conversations in her head. She pictured herself standing her ground, demanding respect, claiming what she believed was hers. She didn't see herself as reckless. She saw herself as brave. She didn't consider how close she was to crossing a line that would change everything. The husband felt like he was walking on glass. Every word felt dangerous. Every silence felt suspicious. He started realizing that no matter what he chose, he would lose something important. The illusion of control was slipping and panic was setting in. The wife started organizing things quietly. Not packing bags, not making announcements, just putting her thoughts in order. She wrote things down. Not messages to send, but truths she needed to remember. She reminded herself of what she deserved. Of what respect looked like. Of how far things had gone. Then came the moment that pulled everything tighter. A message appeared on the wife's phone, not by accident this time. It was intentional. The side chick had decided waiting was no longer an option. The message was bold, unapologetic, and crossed every boundary imaginable. It assumed knowledge. It assumed power. It assumed the wife would stay silent. The wife read it once. Then again. Her hands didn't shake. Her heart didn't race. Instead, a deep stillness settled over her. This was it. This was the line being crossed so clearly there was no denying it anymore. At the same time, the husband realized what had happened. He saw the message too late. The damage was done. The secret was no longer his to manage. The situation had moved beyond quiet lies and careful balance. The house felt different that night. Heavier. Charged. Like the calm before a storm that everyone senses but no one can stop. The wife didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her silence carried intention now, not uncertainty. Somewhere else, the side chick waited, convinced she had finally forced movement. She didn't know that she had just triggered something far bigger than she expected. All three of them were standing on the edge now. And whatever happened next would change everything. The message didn't just cross a line, it erased it. The wife read it one last time, then locked her phone and set it down like she was placing a final piece on a board. In that moment, something shifted from reaction to intention. She wasn't confused anymore. She wasn't waiting. Whatever happened next would happen on her terms. The husband hovered nearby, pretending to be busy, pretending not to notice the weight in the room. He knew that message had changed everything. He could feel it in the way she moved, calm and deliberate, not rushed, not emotional. That calm scared him more than anger ever could. Anger meant there was still room to argue. This felt final, even if nothing had been said yet. What he didn't know was that the wife had already discovered something else. Something he didn't expect her to find. It wasn't just messages or missed calls. It was a detail that connected too many loose ends to ignore. A shared plan. A conversation that went beyond feelings and into logistics. Dates. Assumptions. Decisions being discussed without her knowledge, about a life she was still living. She hadn't confronted him about it. Not yet. She wanted to see how far the deception went. How much he would still try to hide now that the walls were closing in. Because sometimes the truth doesn't reveal itself all at once. Sometimes you let people keep talking until they expose themselves. The side chick on her end felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. She believed she had finally forced the situation into the open. She expected confrontation, drama, maybe even tears. What she didn't expect was silence. No response. No reaction. And silence, when you're waiting for validation, can feel like rejection. That silence pushed her into a risky decision. She convinced herself that the wife needed to hear the truth directly, her version of it. Not through screenshots or secondhand explanations, but face to face. She framed it in her mind as honesty, as closure, as standing up for herself. In reality, it was desperation wearing confidence. The husband sensed her growing boldness and tried to slow her down, but it was too late. The balance he had been juggling for so long was tipping, and his attempts to control it were failing. Every message he sent trying to calm things only made her more determined. Every delay made her feel more entitled to act. The wife noticed his panic. The way he watched his phone. The way he flinched at notifications. She didn't ask questions. She already had enough answers. Instead, she focused on grounding herself, on staying steady, on not letting anyone else dictate her emotions. Then came the unexpected call. It wasn't from the side chick. It was from someone else entirely. Someone who didn't know they were stepping into the middle of this mess. The call revealed another layer, another connection, another truth that made the situation bigger than a private betrayal. It confirmed what the wife had started to suspect. This wasn't just a secret relationship. It was a double life that had been running longer and deeper than she was ever told. Her hands tightened around the phone, but her voice stayed calm as she listened. When the call ended, she sat quietly, letting the information settle. The stakes had just risen. This wasn't just about emotions anymore. This was about choices that had real consequences. The husband noticed her distance grow but misread it. He thought she was pulling away because she was hurt. He didn't realize she was pulling back because she was seeing the full picture. And once you see clearly, you stop reacting and start deciding. The side chick, growing impatient and emboldened, made her move. She reached out again, this time not with emotion but with certainty. She spoke as if things were already decided. As if the wife was just delaying the inevitable. That message didn't hurt. It clarified. The wife finally responded, but not the way anyone expected. Short, controlled, polite. No insults. No explanations. Just enough to signal that the conversation wasn't going to go the way the side chick imagined. That response unsettled her. It didn't match the narrative she had created in her head. Meanwhile, the husband realized he was losing control of the story. Both women were acting independently now. He wasn't the center anymore. He was the problem they were reacting to. That realization hit him hard. He tried to call his wife to talk, to explain, but she didn't engage. Not yet. The house felt like it was holding its breath. Every sound felt amplified. Every movement felt heavy. The wife moved through the space with intention, as if she was preparing for something unseen. She wasn't packing or planning an escape. She was positioning herself for a confrontation that would change everything. The side chick, unaware of how much she didn't know, began preparing for what she believed would be a defining moment. She imagined walking away victorious, finally acknowledged. She didn't consider that she might be walking into a situation where she had far less control than she thought. The husband stood at the center of it all, realizing too late that secrets don't just come out, they explode. He could feel the moment approaching, the one he had been avoiding for months. The moment where everything would collide. And somewhere between silence, bold messages, and half-truths, the stage was set. The next interaction wouldn't just be uncomfortable. It would be irreversible. The confrontation didn't happen the way any of them imagined. There was no shouting, no dramatic entrance, no scene pulled from a movie. It happened on a quiet afternoon, when the weight of everything finally became too heavy to carry. The wife asked her husband to sit down. Her voice was calm, steady, almost gentle. That alone told him this wasn't going to end the way he hoped. She didn't start with accusations. She started with facts, dates, messages, plans that were never hers to approve. She laid everything out slowly, piece by piece, like she was setting the truth on the table and letting it speak for itself. The husband tried to interrupt, to explain, to soften the blow, but she stopped him with one look. She wasn't there for excuses. She was there for honesty. For the first time, he didn't deny anything. He admitted the affair. He admitted the lies. He admitted how long it had gone on. His voice cracked when he spoke, not just from guilt, but from relief. Carrying two lives had finally caught up to him. The truth was ugly, but it was out. The wife listened without reacting. No tears. No raised voice. Just quiet focus. When he finished, she asked one final question, the one that mattered most. Not about love. Not about the other woman. But about respect. And he didn't have an answer. That's when she told him her decision. She wasn't dramatic about it. She didn't threaten. She simply stated it. The marriage as it had been was over. Trust had been broken too deeply, and she refused to spend her life questioning her worth. She wasn't asking him to choose. She had already chosen herself. The weight of that hit him harder than anything else. He realized too late that the wife he took for granted wasn't weak or dependent. She was strong enough to walk away without chaos. And that strength left him with nothing to argue against. The side chick found out soon after. Not through the husband, but through silence. Messages went unanswered. Calls were ignored. When she finally reached him, his tone had changed. The excitement was gone. The secrecy no longer felt thrilling. It felt embarrassing. She demanded explanations. She reminded him of promises. She talked about everything she had invested. And for the first time he saw the situation clearly. What once felt like escape now felt like pressure. What once felt flattering now felt manipulative. He told her it was over. Not softly. Not gently. Just honestly. The side chick didn't take it well. She accused him of using her. She blamed the wife. She tried to rewrite the story to protect her pride. But the truth was simple. She had believed a version of him that didn't exist. And now she was left holding expectations that were never going to be met. The wife didn't engage in any of it. She blocked numbers. She closed doors. She leaned into her support system and focused on healing. The storm had passed, but the air still felt charged. She knew recovery wouldn't be quick, but she also knew she had reclaimed something important. Her voice. Her boundaries. Her sense of self. Just when it felt like the chapter was closing, the unexpected twist surfaced. The wife received one last message, not from the side chick, but from someone else connected to the situation. Someone who had stayed quiet until now. The message contained information that reframed everything. It revealed that the side chick hadn't been the only one. That the husband's double life had layers even she didn't know about. The realization was shocking, but it didn't break her. Instead, it confirmed what her instincts had been telling her all along. Walking away wasn't just the right choice. It was the only safe one. She didn't confront him again. She didn't need to. Some truths don't require explanation once you're done carrying them. The husband, left alone with the consequences of his choices, finally understood the cost of deception. The side chick, forced to face her own role in the situation, had to sit with the reality that confidence without integrity always collapses. And the wife moved forward, not with bitterness but with clarity. The story everyone thought was about a wife versus a side chick turned out to be something deeper. It was about boundaries. About self-respect. About what happens when audacity meets quiet strength. And even as the dust settled, one thing remained clear. The woman everyone underestimated was the one who walked away with everything that truly mattered. After everything came out, the silence that followed felt strange but honest. The wife didn't rush to explain herself to anyone. She didn't owe the world a breakdown or a performance. She took her time, letting the truth settle into its proper place. Some days were heavier than others, but each day felt clearer than the last. For the first time in a long while, her thoughts belonged only to her. The separation wasn't dramatic, but it was firm. Practical conversations replaced emotional ones. Bills were discussed. Boundaries were set. The husband tried to apologize more than once, not with excuses this time, but with regret. He admitted he didn't recognize himself anymore. He said losing her was the wake-up call he never expected. She listened, but she didn't waver. Apologies don't rebuild trust once it's been fractured beyond repair. Friends and family eventually learned the truth, not through gossip, but through quiet honesty. Some were shocked. Others admitted they had sensed something was wrong but didn't know how deep it went. The wife didn't paint herself as a victim or a hero. She simply told the story as it happened. That grounded honesty earned her more respect than anger ever could. The side chick faded out of the picture, though not without trying to rewrite the narrative one last time. She told people she had been misled, that she believed promises that weren't real. And while that may have been partly true, she also had to sit with her own choices. Being confident didn't excuse crossing boundaries. Being bold didn't make something right. That realization didn't come easily, but it came. The husband was left to face the consequences alone. Without two women pulling him in different directions, he had to look at himself honestly. He lost more than a marriage. He lost trust, reputation, and the illusion that he could manage deception forever. That loss followed him quietly, teaching lessons no argument ever could. For the wife, healing didn't look like instant happiness. It looked like small moments of peace. Waking up without tension in her chest. Laughing without forcing it. Making decisions without second-guessing herself. She started doing things she had postponed for years, not because she needed a distraction, but because she finally had the space to choose herself. She reflected often on how easy it is to ignore red flags when you believe in loyalty. How silence can feel safer than confrontation. How women are sometimes expected to endure quietly while others move boldly without consequences. That awareness didn't make her bitter. It made her wiser. The story followed her for a while. People whispered. Some took sides. But eventually the noise faded. What remained was clarity. She understood now that the real conflict had never been wife versus side chick. It had been truth versus comfort. Self-respect versus fear. And once she chose herself, everything else fell into place. She also learned that audacity often survives in secrecy, but it crumbles in the light. The side chick's confidence only existed as long as she believed she was hidden. Once exposed, it lost its power. And the husband's double life only worked because he thought no one would ever connect the dots. Looking back, the wife realized how close she came to doubting herself. How easily someone else's lies could have rewritten her reality. But she trusted her instincts just in time. That trust became her anchor moving forward. The ending wasn't loud. There was no final showdown, no public apology, no dramatic closure scene. Life simply continued, but with clearer boundaries and stronger self-awareness. And sometimes, that kind of ending is the most satisfying of all. This story is a reminder that betrayal doesn't always arrive with chaos. Sometimes it comes quietly, wrapped in excuses and half-truths. But so does strength. Strength shows up in calm decisions, in choosing peace over pride, and in walking away when staying would cost you your dignity. In the end, the wife didn't win a competition. She reclaimed her life. And that made all the difference.